So on behalf of these two groups, PNA Northwest Indiana and PNAA Prayer Warrior Group, I would like to say that in collaboration with the PNAA South Central Region led by RVP Michelle Sindanya and the PNAA COVID Task Force led by Jenny Aying, I am so honored to present our speaker tonight, Father Radmar Jao. Father Radmar Jao, SJ, is the Director of Vocations for the USA West Province of the Society of Jesus. He was an award-winning actor in Los Angeles, appearing on film, TV, and stage before entering the Jesuits in 2001, acting in TV sitcom Seinfeld, and was on the movie Minority Report. Para akong starstruck, Father. Father Radmar now uses his acting skills as a witness to his faith and calling as a Jesuit priest. Prior to his ordination in 2011, he chronicled his path to priesthood in a series of YouTube videos before serving as the vocation promoter for the former California province. Most recently, he served as the associate chaplain for the students at Boise State University and coordinator for Fire Pit Ministry, an inter-parish post-college young adult ministry in Boise, Idaho. He is a seasoned spiritual director who is passionate about Ignatian spirituality, ministering to young adults, especially with Christus Ministries. Father Radmar recently completed the final stage of Jesuit formation called Tertanship in Salamanca, Spain, and is excited to call the LMU, Loyola Marymount University, Jesuit community home for the next few years. In addition to acting, he enjoys CrossFit, hiking, cooking, baking, watching movies, good conversations, and people who make him laugh. Ladies and gentlemen, Father Radmar Jao.
Hi, Father.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everybody. That bio always makes it sound like a dating app or something.
Yeah.
Long walks on the beach, and it's just anyway. Thank you, everybody. It's good to be here. If I can ask everybody to just mute yourselves so that there's no, interruptions and things. I'd really appreciate it. It's amazing that you all are here from all over the United States. This is pretty amazing. I first thought I was just going to be talking to people in Northwest Indiana. So I apologize if this is if my presentation is a little bit more focused on Northwest Indiana, what do you call it, landmarks and things. But so I'll try to adapt that when I get to it. But before I get going, I want to tell you a quick little story. So there was this queen, right? This queen who lived in this kingdom, and very benevolent queen. And one year she decided she wanted the artists of her kingdom to paint or draw or sculpt anything that represented the peace of their kingdom. Right? It was a very peaceful kingdom. She wanted to represent this through art. So all these artists submitted things to this contest. And she whittled it down, all the submissions, down to 2 different paintings. One of the paintings was your idyllic sort of mountain region and a nice body of water and the sun peeking through the skies. And you can almost hear the birds singing in this painting. It was so beautiful and so peaceful just to look at. People saw this as one of the finalists, and they said, that's it. That is the painting that's going to win the piece, because we know where this location is. It definitely is a peaceful place. The second finalist that she chose was a similar painting, but it's a little bit darker, a little bit more purple and hazy. It looked like there was a thunderstorm in the distance. It was more craggly rocks, and it was like a rushing river with a waterfall and even lightning clouds in the background, or lightning bolts in the background. People saw that picture and they're like, what is going on? Why is this doesn't look peaceful at all. It feels very chaotic and when you look at it, you feel kind of anxious, right? Because there's a storm coming, and this water and the craggly rocks just aren't very, peaceful to be around, what people said. Well, sure enough, the day came where the queen made her decision. And sure enough, she chose the second picture. People are like, what? Why? Your Majesty, why? Why is this the image of peace in our land? And she said, because if you look a little bit closer, look at that waterfall. The artist painted a bird's nest with a bird nesting there with its little chicklings. That, she said, to me is peace. Because peace is not the absence of chaos or noise or anxiety or stress. True peace, he said, is the ability to be in the midst of all of that and still find a sense of calm in your heart. Let's say that again. True peace is the ability to be in the midst of all the chaos and noise and still find a sense of calm in your heart. If I share my screen in here, can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I share this story because I think it's the best illustration I've found of what is at the heart of Ignatian spirituality, of the Jesuit spirituality. True peace, yes, but even deeper than that, freedom. Freedom from the things of this world that keep us from God, and freedom for service. Freedom to be the hands and feet, the mind and heart of Christ himself. And Jesuits do this by taking theological concepts and making them accessible in ways that unlocks the freedom and peace that God desires for all of us, right? Despite the being in the midst of a raging waterfall of life that surrounds each one of us. Now, I've been a Jesuit for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years this August, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, actually. And the 10-year anniversary, I celebrate my 10-year anniversary of my ordination priesthood in just a few months, in June, right? As Elena mentioned, I've been a spiritual director now for, nearly 17 years and have been directing retreats for young adults for the past 9 years or so here in the Jesuits' West Province, which encompasses all the western part of the United States, from Alaska all the way down to San Diego, including some mountain states. As you heard in my bio, my most recent assignment was in Boise, Idaho. But I was born in Northwest Indiana. I was born in Gary, Indiana, and raised in Valparaiso, Indiana, which is just a couple of miles away from Gary. I went to grade school at a Catholic grade school called St. Bridget's in Hobart. I went to high school at Andrean High School, which is a Catholic high school in Merrillville, Indiana. And I earned my bachelor's degree in telecommunications and theater from Indiana University in Bloomington. I was a theater minor, communications major. And then after graduating, I moved to Los Angeles to pursue film and television production, but fell into the acting thing, taking after my mom and my grandmother, who both were Filipino actresses during the 40s and during the 30s and 40s. So I'd acted professionally throughout the 90s. And then the call came around the late 90s, and I entered the Jesuits in 2001 and was ordained 10 years later in 2011. So that's sort of my elevator speech for sort of the trajectory of how I come to you today. And I have to say, it's a little surreal. It's a little surreal being here with you all, because I practically grew up in the hospital system of Northwest Indiana. Both my grandfather and father were physicians. My grandfather was an OB/GYN. My dad was a general practitioner. They would make rounds in Gary and Hobart and Crown Point, and occasionally in Valparaiso. And now my youngest sister, and brother-in-law are doctors in Arizona. So as a son and brother of physicians, I have a deep respect for medical professionals, and especially for nurses. As some of you had mentioned, my aunt in Chicago is Conchita Manalo. How now she goes by how was a nurse. She's retired now. My cousins are nurses in Chicago. I have an aunt in St. Mary's in Hobart, Mary Lou Green, who is a nurse. My best friend from college is a nurse in Indianapolis. I have a couple of Jesuit brothers actually who were nurses before becoming Jesuits, but who were recently actually pulled from their ministries to return to nursing so that they could help out at our Jesuit retirement center and infirmary here in Northern California. As a matter of fact, for that, it was inspiring for us to see how willing these two guys were to return to nursing. It was like, they left nursing. They thought they could leave nursing, but nursing was always a part of them, right? But they left, they went back into it so that it can be of help where the help was needed the most. We had an outbreak of COVID at our retirement center in November, and our provincial, our boss asked for any medical professionals to come out of retirement, so to speak, and help out at the retirement center. These two guys said yes right away. They polished off their stethoscope so that they could help once again. I actually invited one of those nurses to come on and be part of my presentation, but he's on duty tonight, so he couldn't come. I have a deep respect for nurses. I've seen firsthand all that you do, which often goes unnoticed. And I can only imagine what this year has been like for you. What I can only experience from a distance through the news media has been your reality for an entire year. I can only imagine the stress levels are pretty much off the charts and overwhelming for many nurses. Which is why I felt compelled to accept Elena's invitation a few months ago to speak with you today and title my presentation, Care for the Wounded Healer, and specifically spiritual care. Because all of us, professional helpers, are wounded in our own ways, right? For all, at the end of the day, we're not the heroes that people make us out to be. We're just mere mortals, human beings doing our jobs. Yes, we help others to receive comfort and encouragement, yet in our humanity, we need care for ourselves as well, whether we know it or not. From a Christian perspective, professional helpers share the comfort of Christ with other people by being a gentle, strong, and compassionate presence for them. But we often forget that we also share in the suffering and wounds of Christ, and thus the suffering and wounds of other people, including ourselves and our own. Being a wounded healer starts with a deepening self-awareness of our own personal struggles and allowing ourselves to receive empathy, that tender-hearted understanding and compassionate support from God and other people that offer it to us. And I get it. It's hard for us to do. It's hard for us to receive help, right? It's easier to look around at the people on this Zoom call and kind of skim around and see people that we recognize and think, oh, I bet you they need to hear this message more than I do. But right now, the point of this evening is to allow ourselves, all of us, to be present here, right now, as we are. We may have had a busy day, we may have had a relaxing day. However we come without judgment, without comparison, because we do need the care as well. Because the love and healing that Christ has to offer us is the very love and healing that you can give to other people in your care, right? So that they know that they're not alone. When we're able to feel our own sadness, our own anger, anxiety, our own inadequacy even, we can more deeply empathize with the emotions of other people so that they can articulate their experience and receive the care that we offer. Another way of putting it is, in order to take away suffering, we must also be willing and able to enter into the suffering, which is really the definition of compassion, isn't it? The Latin root word of compassion is compassio, to suffer with, right? And so care for the wounded healer is really about allowing Christ to do the healing. Which is why my hope is that rather than just talking at you, right? Maybe you're used to just, It's like continuing education or something, receiving facts and data that you probably are already aware of. Instead of just doing that, I thought maybe it might be more helpful to give you an opportunity to pray to pray with and experience Ignatian spirituality. And I'll do that towards the end of our time together, which is really interesting because as we heard at the beginning, most of you or many of you are part of a prayer group that meets every night, and you've been praying every night for the past year. So this is perfect. Hopefully, this can be your prayer for this evening, for this day. But this prayer that I'll lead you to, hopefully, will leave you with an experience of how to be the peace and freedom in the midst of a raging waterfall of life around you, even if it's just a sliver. I mean, we can only do so much in the short amount of time that we have. But the seed will hopefully be planted, which you can then nurture and allow to grow on your own, and maybe share with one another tomorrow in your prayer group, right? So this, the bird and the waterfall story, I first heard that story in a homily that a priest gave, oh gosh, many, many years ago. And it stuck with me because I'm the type of person who easily gets stressed out, especially in times of transitions, right? And as a member of a missionary order, we Jesuits move around a lot. For example, in my 20 years of being a Jesuit, the longest I've ever lived in any community is 3.5 years. And that was in Boise. So there's a lot of moving and a lot of stress and a lot of transitions. So the story came to me soon after getting ordained, which is a pretty big life transition. So it really helped me out during that time. But even though it made sense, it really came alive for me. The sort of lesson or the moral of that story of the bird and the waterfall really came alive for me when I first arrived in Boise, Idaho, where I was missioned 6 years ago as the co-chaplain of the Student Center at Boise State University, and then also as the coordinator for a young adult ministry there. Within my first week of arriving, I found myself, even though there was another Jesuit there with me, I found myself feeling very overwhelmed with all the new people I was meeting, overwhelmed with the lack of diversity in the area. Maraming puti. There's not very many Filipinos there. And feeling overwhelmed and deluged with my various responsibilities piling up on my to-do list, with what was supposed to be 2 part-time jobs was really 2 full-time jobs, right? I could barely keep my head above water with everything that was going on. My office was a mess. I could never seem to whittle down my to-do list. One student after another would interrupt my workflow, while at the same time I had to prepare a daily homily for Mass, putting finishing touches for an upcoming student retreat. It was just a lot. And for me, when I get stressed out from work, I need to shut things out, right? Close things off in order to concentrate and focus on what I need to do. So if I'm juggling too many things during that time, I get visibly agitated, I get a short fuse with people, and every fiber of my being tenses up so that I can focus on getting the job done. Maybe some of you are the same when you're in the hospitals, right? To give you just a small sense of how crazy how my crazy brain works under stress, during this period of time, I never emptied my trash can. Why? Just in case there was something in there that I shouldn't have thrown out, right? And I might need for later on, right? I was basically using my trash bin as a storage for stuff, for junk. I eventually did throw it away when the stress was over, but within the first month of dealing with the college students and young adults, I found myself shutting my door a lot, rather than keeping it open. Even half jokingly telling students, get out of my office right now, make an appointment. I don't have time for all this stuff. I couldn't afford another interruption of students asking me, what is God's plan for my life? Or hear another sob story of a relationship breakup, or, kids wanting to come in and just go play a game of ping pong. The funny thing about all those things is that's actually part of my job, but I just couldn't do it. Couldn't deal with those things in moments of stress. It's in these moments where I have no control of my surroundings that it feels like this image of the waterfall. This water just keeps flowing. And I know I should be like that bird sitting in the middle of the rushing waterfall and just listening to the water, rather than panicking that I'm in the middle of a waterfall. I mean, I know that I should just turn to prayer, reach out to close friends or go for a hike in nature so that I can ground myself again in God, so I can experience that inner calm and deep peace that God affords me. I know what I need to do, but I don't do it. I don't always turn to God in these moments. In all honesty, more often than not, I find it easier just to shut everything out. Not just block, I mean, just shut everything out, even my emotions, just to accomplish the task at hand and cope with the surrounding stress. A quick example was when my grandmother died back in 2012. Right, it was a few months after my ordination. Um, this is her right here. Uh, she was a typical Lola who would let you do things that your parents wouldn't let you do. My 8 other siblings and I grew up with her. When my grandfather died, she moved in with us. She was someone who knew us better than we knew ourselves. In fact, when I was even 16, when I was 16 years old, she told me that I would make a good Jesuit one day. I had no idea what a Jesuit was, let alone wanted me a priest. Right? At 16, she knew. She somehow knew. Anyway, so when I heard the news that her health was deteriorating, I immediately flew home, knowing it would probably be the last time I would see her. And I was a little nervous because after my ordination, which you can imagine she was so happy to witness, she made me promise that I would do her funeral when she died. Little did I know that it would come so soon. Again, it was almost as if she knew. So within days of arriving back in Indiana, my grandmother died. And as you can imagine, the chaos of planning her funeral began, right? Because I was the priest, I found myself in charge of everything. My family looked to me for advice on planning for the funeral because they had no idea. So I didn't have time to grieve because in my role as the priest, I felt I had to take care of everyone else around me who was grieving. And because of my promise to my grandmother, I needed to make sure all the details of the funeral and the mass was perfect. She was one of the most important people in my life, but I thought I had to numb my emotions so I could keep it all together and stay strong for the family. Well, that's what a priest is supposed to do, right? Well, it turned out to be a beautiful funeral, and I have to say I was pretty proud of myself and the work that my family and I did because we sent her off in style. Then 4 months later, I was helping out on a silent retreat for students with another Jesuit. This was in San Francisco, actually, at the University of San Francisco. Well, this one night at the retreat center, he was giving this other Jesuit was giving a talk about something. I don't even remember what it was, but he began. What I do remember was he began by guiding us in a meditation of a scripture passage. It had been a crazy and busy week for me, so I thought this would be a great time to just, listen to the water and participate in the prayer. Now, the retreat center was an old mansion-style building, and we were in the living room area, right? There were couches and love seats around the room where the students were all seated. Some were sitting on the floor, and the room was dimly lit by a few candles in the room. Now, I'm used to leading guided meditation, so I knew where my Jesuit brother was leading with this, right? In fact, I even helped plan this retreat. But I remember going into this time, I just wanted to relax, just to breathe and take some time for myself. I didn't expect anything huge to happen. Well, as he continued the meditation, this Jesuit invited us to imagine Jesus walking towards us. Fine. Out of the blue, the image of my grandmother came to my imagination. The person walking towards me was the younger version of my grandmother that you see there on the screen. She approached me with this beautiful smile, the same smile that you see there. And she had this look of pride on her face, as if to say she was proud of me being a priest and that she hoped I was doing okay. I looked at it as the ghost of my Lola visiting me in this time. And as this was happening, I felt a tear roll down my face, which quickly turned into a river of tears. Which then I quickly realized I had to leave the room because I didn't want the students to see me ugly crying in front of them, right? That'd be embarrassing. After all, I was there to help them have an experience of Jesus. This retreat wasn't about me. So when I left the room, I thought, get yourself together, Radmar, keep yourself together. You control this. You can control this. But I couldn't help it. Once I stepped outside in the dark, alone on that chilly evening, I found myself hunched over, heaving and crying uncontrollably. I cried so hard that, that my crying turned into almost a silent scream. You know what I mean? It's like nothing came out of my mouth. The grief was too deep for words, that all that came out was silence. It was a release so deep that I didn't even have a sound for it. Sadness and grief that had been sitting there for the past 4 months, bottled up, and finally had a chance to come out. I went for a walk around the retreat grounds, feeling a combination of grief, but also gratitude, because for the first time, I acknowledged that the wounds of my grandmother's death was still fresh in my heart, and I needed healing. And Christ was offering it to me in a very real way through my grandmother. I remember saying to myself, Jesus, this isn't a good time for you to help me right now. Please just help me stop crying. And I realized why this was all happening, and never took the time to grieve her death. So my grandmother made sure that I did it. Her ghost, her spirit showed up to remind me that it was okay to grieve. She helped me realize that during my time at home, when planning the funeral, being a priest took precedence over being a grandson. It took precedence over being a human being needing to grieve the loss of his grandmother. In fact, a few years later, when my father died, a Jesuit priest friend said to me, Radmar, remember, you're a son first, a priest second. Make sure you grieve your father. Advice I wish I had with my grandmother. These experiences taught me a lot, especially this, that helpers need help as well. I've been trained to help bring people healing, right? To help heal other people's wounds, but I'm wounded too. And I learned that it's okay and vital that there be moments where I should be, and I need to be a grandson. I need to be a son. I need to be a brother or sister. I need to, or for my sisters, I need to be a human being first. These experiences taught me that the strength of my priesthood comes from who I am, not from what I do. It comes from who I am as a son of God, a beloved human being first. And my priesthood and ministry flows from that. The strength of my priesthood comes from who I am, not from what I do. And I've come to believe that that the same is true for all professional helpers, like nurses as well. Your strength comes from realizing that sometimes you're also a patient that needs healing, that needs care, that needs comforting. I mean, remember, maybe some of you don't remember this, maybe it's been a long time, but do you remember provision 5 of your code of ethics? There on the screen, right? The nurse owes the same duties to self as to others, including the responsibility to promote health and safety, preserve wholeness and of character and integrity, maintain competence, and continue personal and professional growth. I hope that sounds familiar to all of you. But it's this interpretive statement, 5.2, promotion of personal health, safety, and well-being, that I think is worth reading in its entirety for our purposes tonight. In case it's been a while since you've looked at this, could a volunteer be willing, anybody willing to just read this for the group? The rest of you can stay muted, but if you're willing to volunteer, just unmute yourself. Okay, Araceli, go ahead, thank you.
As professionals who assess, intervene, evaluate, protect, promote, educate, and conduct research for the health and safety of others and society, nurses have a duty to take the same care for their own health and safety. Nurses should model the same health maintenance and health promotion measures that they teach and research. Seek health care when needed and avoid taking unnecessary risks to health or safety in the course of their customary professional and personal activities. A healthy diet and exercise, maintenance of family and personal relationships, adequate leisure and recreation, attention to spiritual or religious needs, and satisfying work must be held in balance to promote and maintain the health and well-being of the nurse.
Sound familiar? I hope people remember that. Yes, yes. I thank you, Araceli. You know, I put the emphasis on attention to spiritual and religious needs simply because of what we're doing here tonight.
It is very important.
Now, I don't know how many of you are still active. If many of you are retired, I don't know where you are in that, but I'm sure you know a lot of, you have many nurse friends who are still actively serving. But maybe there's some of you here who have felt or are feeling unbalanced or overwhelmed or stressed by all that COVID has wrought this past year, right? I imagine some of you may be feeling deluged by the chaos and noise and anxiety and stress and burnout at your respective hospitals or clinics, not to mention the death that you experience every single day. I imagine it can feel like standing under a raging waterfall where you're barely able to catch your breath. Maybe there have been days like that for some of you, or all of you. It reminds me of a rafting trip, whitewater rafting trip that I took when I was in Idaho. It was in central Idaho. It's along the Salmon River of central Idaho. There you go. So we went rafting. It was a 6-day rafting trip, 6 days and 5 nights. I went with several families. And so you can see the rafts there on the right-hand side, right? Big rafts with all our things there. Well, we got to this one day, we got to this area. You can see me there. That's me in the canoe with that other guy behind me. And the waters are not that rough compared to what we've been through. It may look rough right there, but it was pretty rough. There's some waves like that. Well, we were canoeing along, and we tipped over. That canoe that I was in tipped over, and I was underneath the canoe, and I was able to get myself out from underneath. And as I reached, because the thing is, you're supposed to reach for, there's string there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a string around the canoe. Reach for the string and pull yourself in. Well, I tried to reach, but the current was too strong. It pulled me away. And just as I started to panic, I remembered rule number 1 when tipping over. You lift your legs so that you don't get caught on a boulder underneath the water. And then you turn yourself, kind of hold on to your life jacket, you turn yourself downstream and go with the flow. That's kind of where you get the term, go with the flow, right? Until it comes to a more, easy spot and your group can come and get you, which is exactly what happened. But you have to realize that you're in trouble, catch yourself, and then turn around and go with the flow. Just kind of move with the current. How often in this past year alone have you felt like you were swimming upstream without really getting anywhere? Maybe even feeling like you were drowning, right? I think this is a common issue amongst professional helpers, priests, nurses, whoever is in a helping profession. We need to be in control, right? To be in the driver's seat all the time, taking care of all the details, putting other people's needs before our own. And as Pinoys, it's doubly so. It's part of our DNA to help people, to be helping people, right? Which is a great thing and a real gift that God has given us and given our culture. But there is a shadow side, and that is it's very difficult for us to receive help, let alone ask for it, even when we know we need it. Oh, kumusta ka na? Okay lang ako. Okay lang. It's okay. I'm fine. That's often our response, right? To anyone reaching out to us. Okay lang. I'm okay. Okay lang. We continue to swim upstream, determined to make it to the safety of our canoe all on our own. We continue to stand under a rushing waterfall, getting used to the sensation of chaos and stress and anxiety beating down upon us to the point of getting desensitized to the danger that we really may be in. Maybe some of you have taken more double shifts this past year than you normally do. What once was optional is now commonplace or even mandatory. Maybe you're just Maybe because you're trying to earn extra money to send back to family. You're helping in the Philippines, or maybe you're doing double shifts to cover for a sick coworker, or God forbid, you're covering for a fellow nurse who has died from COVID. This may not be new to you, and you might be already aware of this, but I was surprised when I learned this statistic that even though Filipinos make up 4% of all nurses in the United States, right? There's this recent study by the National Nurses United. Maybe you've seen this, right? They found that about a third of all nurse deaths from COVID were Pinoy. 31.5%, second only to the white nurses. Now this came out in September, right? I can only imagine the numbers are probably higher today. And even though burnout and depression were real issues for some of you before the pandemic, they've been exacerbated during this pandemic year due to factors like maybe an unsupportive workplace or overwhelming stress at the number of people dying that you can't save, or the very real fear of bringing COVID to your family, bringing it home to your family. And then I'm sure you're familiar with this term, compassion fatigue, right? Where you become so numb to the effects of caring for somebody and comfort others, you just become so exhausted to care anymore. You do your job, but you really don't care. You're just doing it because you have to do it. So as a result, you take it out on your loved ones when you get home, or your fellow coworkers, or maybe even your patients, the very ones that you're trying to help. Some of you have experienced more death than you have helped people recover in this past year. When you know a person's going to die, there's a feeling of intense helplessness, right? And there's nothing worse for a helper than to feel helpless. If any of that resonates with you, maybe you're feeling like this, or maybe you've felt like this. Don't worry, help is on the way. Have any of you seen this image before? It's based on the gospel passage where Jesus calms the storm and invites Peter to walk on the water. But then Peter gets scared, right? He sees that, oh my gosh, I'm in water. He notices, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be doing this. And then he sinks. This is one of my favorite sort of prints. It's by this Korean artist, Young-sun Kim. It's called The Hand of God. But I find this a powerful image because notice the perspective. It's from underwater. Jesus is the one who's reaching out to the viewer. And when you look closely, I don't know if you can see it on your screens because it might be a little bit blurry. Jesus isn't forcing himself on the viewer. He's offering his hand with a smile, with a calm demeanor, and a gentleness that leaves you feeling less anxious and reassured that even though things may still be crappy all around us and you're underwater and there's 1,000 things going on, you can almost hear him saying, I'm here. Trust me. I love you. Just reach out. But have we found ourselves in a similar position of being underwater, whether at work or at home, especially during this past year? I know I have. As a Jesuit, I'm constantly being called forth out of my comfort zone, out of the comfort zone of my boat, like Peter, right? And for most of us Jesuits, we have to, whenever we're asked to do something, we have the zeal and desire to give it ourselves over fully to our ministry and to step outside that boat. And as I really shared with you earlier, I can easily get in over my head, especially when my Jesuit ego gets in the way and I fall prey to the temptation to say yes to everything that comes my way. But I cover it up and refuse to help from someone saying, okay, no, it's okay, I got this, I got it. You go ahead, you've got a lot to do yourself, you go ahead, I'll be fine. Before I know it, I'm underwater. For you as nurses, maybe it looks like donning and doffing your PPE all day in, day out, or moving patients from using a rebreather oxygen mask to intubating them on a ventilator, knowing that only 30% of vented patients will make it through. Maybe you've had the privilege and heartbreak of holding a cell phone or an iPad in front of a dying patient so family members can say goodbye. Maybe instead of sinking underwater, you feel like you're sinking in an entangled web of IV tubes and nasal cannulas and Foley catheters and PICC lines and chest tubes. Whatever situation you may be in, you can rest easy because if Jesus calls out to you on the boat, is calling out to you on that, come out of that boat or reaching down to you, Rest assured that it's going to be okay, even if you feel like you're sinking or are already underwater. Jesus reassures all of us these days. You don't have to do this all on your own. I'm here. Trust me. I love you. Now grab hold. When we do that, when we grab hold, we become like that bird nesting on the waterfall's ledge, not denying or disdaining our emotional struggles. Instead, we accept our inner distress, finding that inner calm amidst the chaos. So much so that we can receive, we can begin to receive and allow ourselves to receive the empathy and guidance that we need from Christ himself, so that we can share the grace that we've received with others who are hurting and in need of compassion. There's an old adage that I've heard in priestly circles: you can't give what you don't already have. Okay? So I want to invite you now to just do a quick breathing exercise with me, okay? So I'll take a moment, if you've got anything in your hands or whatever, put things down, get yourself in a comfortable position and close your eyes. Close your eyes for a moment and take 3 deep breaths in and out at your own pace. Breathing in fully, breathing out completely. Now together, let's take a deep breath together, breathing in fully. Now exhale, breathing out completely. Again, breathe in fully and exhale completely. One more time. Together, let's breathe in fully and exhale completely. Now at the end of your exhale, push out the rest of it that's inside you. Even if you think you don't have any more, push out, push, 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 and hold. Hold it. Hold it until you can't hold anymore. Okay, breathe in. I'm sure some of you have done this exercise with your patients at some point as well, especially if you're like respiratory nurses, right? I love this exercise. Why? Because just when you think you've run out of breath, when you think you've got nothing left, just a little bit more beneath the surface. But you first need to break free from your old breathing patterns and enter into that uncomfortable place of vulnerability and allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to notice, to experience the reality of discomfort and maybe some pain before taking in that breath of life once again. And when you do, it's that relief, that feeling of relief, right? It's in this moment of vulnerability that the healing power of Christ can take effect. Why? Because that's where we give up control. Where we give up control, like I did on my walk at the retreat center, that cathartic walk, right? It's in those vulnerable moments that we can accept and allow ourselves to be healed, to receive healing. It's an uncomfortable place to be, no doubt, and nobody wants to go there. Nobody likes to be vulnerable, right? I mean, for me as a priest, for example, I can't be vulnerable all the time. I have to always be guarded and on, which means you don't always get to see the real me, which can get exhausting on my part. Maybe you feel like this too. As nurses, you may feel like you have to always live up to the hero status that the media and politicians and society has placed upon you this time during this year, even when you know that you need care for yourself. Maybe you want to be like that bird on the waterfall. Maybe, but you don't know how. Maybe you don't feel worthy of it. Maybe you feel guilty taking a break or taking care of yourself. Maybe you just don't have time, or maybe not willing to make the time, whatever excuses you come up with. Regardless of what your excuse may be, Jesus still stands there with his hand outstretched, inviting you to grab hold, inviting you to receive his care and his healing. That's what I learned from that cathartic walk at the retreat center. But I will admit, as wonderful as that experience was, it's completely different to try and live out day in and day out. I'll admit that. And it's something that I'm still learning. And even when I resist or reject other people's help, thinking there are others who need more help than I do, I remember this image of Jesus reaching out and saying, I'm here. Trust me. I love you. Now, maybe as you look upon this image, what's stirring inside of you? Maybe Jesus is saying that you, saying that it's saying the same thing to you in your own heart, inviting you tonight to be a wife, to be a son, a daughter, to be a human being first, to shed your nurse's uniform, to shed that responsibility and invite you to grieve, to feel, maybe to yell, invite you to receive the same compassion you give for your patients. Now, there may be some of you who's like, oh, again, some of you may be shutting me down right now, maybe even considering logging off because this is hitting too close to home. That's fine. That's fine. However you're feeling right now, know that Jesus is still right there, offering his hand out to you, reaching out, like he did with me at the retreat center. Maybe you'd rather walk further and further away so people don't hear you cry or see you cry in this situation. Maybe you just want to let out a silent scream like I did. In your car, in your bedroom, in the bathroom, in a nurse's break room. And that's okay too. Jesus is always there, still with you in those vulnerable moments because he's been there. He knows what you're going through because he's been there. It's like what the prophet Isaiah says, right? He was pierced for our sins, crushed for our iniquity. He bore the punishment that makes us whole. By his wounds, we are healed. So stay with me for just a few more moments and allow yourself to enter into that vulnerable space that may feel a little uncomfortable. Because it's there that Jesus, the ultimate wounded healer, wants to encounter you in your own woundedness and need. Because it's through his wounds that we can experience healing. Okay, I've been talking for a little bit while. So before, I want to guide you through a meditation now. So perhaps you could just take a really quick, just kind of stretch break. If you want to stand up for a little bit, shake it out and, grab a drink of water, take a sip of water. I know I do. Just kind of stretch your limbs for a bit, shake out your arms and legs. Okay. So I want to guide you for the last half of this talk. I want to guide you through a meditation so that you can hopefully experience this healing love of Christ and mercy of Christ. Okay. Okay. So before I do that, I'm going to, one second here, excuse me. I'm going to, put on some music so you can hear, so you can have some music that will play underneath all of this. Can you hear that? A little bit music coming through? Okay. Hopefully it's not too loud. You can hear my voice. Okay, so I invite you to place yourself in a comfortable position. Once again, and close your eyes like we did earlier, and breathe in and out at your own pace. Like we did earlier, let's all inhale together, breathing in fully. Then exhale together, breathing out completely. And just when you think you've exhaled completely, exhale even more. Hold it. When you can't hold it anymore, breathe in deeply. We'll do this 2 more times. Breathe in fully together. Exhale completely. Exhale some more. All the way, all the way. Hold. Inhale fully. And last time, exhale, breathing out completely. Just when we reach the edge of our exhalation, exhale even more, push it out. Hold. Breathe in. We think that we've dealt with the heaviness of this past year. We think we're the heroes that the media and society has labeled us to be. And we start to believe that we're okay. Start to believe that we're okay. That someone is always worse off than us. I just don't have time for myself. There's always more beneath the surface. That's what the Lord wants to meet you today. Let's be the opportunity to make space for Christ to care for you. Now, in the course of this meditation, let what happens, happens. Usually we'll engage our imagination. Don't judge anything. Trust the Holy Spirit is the one that's guiding you through my voice. If tears come, great. If they don't, great. If what comes to you is vivid, fantastic. If you find that it's just a time for your breathing, it's good too. Part of learning to be the bird on the waterfall is to allow Christ to sit right next to you where you are, in the realness of your current situation. So, I want you just to, as you close your eyes and continue breathing, listen to this passage. On leaving the synagogue, he entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Simon's mother-in-law lay sick with a fever. They immediately told him about her. He approached, grasped her hand, and helped her up. Then the fever left her, and she waited on them. When it was evening, after sunset, they brought to him all who were ill or possessed by demons. The whole town was gathered at the door. He cured many who were sick with various diseases, and he drove out many demons, not permitting them to speak, because they knew him. Invite space in this place. Engage your imagination and 5 senses. What does the synagogue look like? What do Simon and Andrew, James and John look like? What does Simon's mother-in-law look like? How old is she? What is she wearing? Who are you in the scene? Trust what comes to you. Even if it's a weird thing that happens, right? Just go with it and trust the Holy Spirit is guiding you. Just go with it. Go with the flow. What does this room look like in the house of Simon and Andrew? What time of day is it? Again, who are you in the scene? Are you one of the apostles, or are you one of the crowd that have gathered around this house to see and hear this miracle worker? Maybe you're Peter's mother-in-law. Maybe you're one of the sick people crowding around on Jesus. What is your ailment? What are you seeking healing for? Whatever this room looks like, imagine it turning into one of the rooms in the hospital you work in. What does that look like? How crowded is it in the room? Imagine that you are the patient lying in that bed. You see yourself hooked up to all these tubes. A full IV bag. What are you doing? Are you reading a book? Are you watching TV? Are you writing a letter? Are you sleeping? Again, what is your ailment? As you lie in this bed, is anybody else inside the room with you? Family member, friend? How are you feeling? As you lie there, you hear a knock on the door. Someone knocks and walks in, says your name. It's a nurse. What do they look like? Male or female? How are they dressed? Full PPE or just pre-COVID look? This nurse walks in and does nurse-like things, checking on your vitals, checking on the machinery, making their rounds. How do you feel about this person? And this person sits on your bedside and looks at you, really sees you. How do you feel gazing back at this person? As they look at you, they touch your hand, and they say something to you. What do they say? What does this person say to you? It's a question, a statement, chismis, something more profound. What do you say back? Have a real conversation with this person. Because you come to realize that this person is Christ himself. So you talk about everything from gratitude to anger, and maybe asking questions, why is all this happening? And Jesus looks at you. What's the expression on his face? How does he communicate his care and his love for you in this moment? Maybe you hear him say he understands what you're going through, what you've been going through. What is the tone of his voice when he says this? Straightforward and direct, compassionate and understanding. Maybe he uses other words, given your particular situation, your particular ailment. What do you want to say? What do you want to hear Jesus say to you? What do you say back to him? Start to wrap up your conversation. As you do so, you hear Jesus say, "Thank you for all you have done for my people." Does he name anybody in particular? Is there someone close to your heart comes to mind? Jesus says, thank you for all you've done for this person. What other words of gratitude does he use to convey his own gratitude for you? For how you tried to care for his people, especially those who have suffered so much. He gets up from the bed. Just before he walks out the door, he turns around again. Says, let me care for you. Allow me to care for you. How does it make you feel to hear those words? I care for you. I'm right here. Trust me. I love you. Before Jesus leaves the room, he makes a gesture towards you. What kind of gesture is it? Kiss on the forehead, flying kiss, stroke of your hand or your forehead, an embrace. Whatever it is, receive it as a gift. Jesus walks out the room, and how do you feel in your heart having had this encounter with Jesus? Slowly find your way back to the space, to where you are now in your homes, in your office, wherever you may be right now. Find your way back. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. Just look around, maybe scroll through. See the faces of others looking at you. Jesus looking back at you through your fellow nurses. Friends, strangers, all instruments of Christ's healing. So, thank you for engaging in that meditation and that little prayer. So what now? Um, you know, you guys are a Bible group or a prayer group. Maybe tomorrow, dedicate some time to talk about your experience with one another. I wish we had more time to actually share a little bit of what happened in your own meditation right now, but I know it's already really late out east. So, and I've kind of gone over my time. I'm sorry about that. But share with them what happened on today in this group, in your prayer. Maybe talk about the experience of that second breath, that idea of exhaling, but then there's a little bit more, right? And if you feel like it, I'm willing to offer this. If something came up for you that you really need to talk to somebody about, I'll make myself available. Here's my email, rjao@jesuits.org. Email me and maybe we can set up a time to chat about your experience. Or maybe you want to journal about your experience. Notice where you were drawn closer to joy, to peace, to hope, a sense of healing maybe. Maybe it was just that image of Jesus reaching down. You can look that up, by the way, online. Google the hand of God by Young Sun Kim, right? And you'll see this image. Or even just put Jesus reaching into the water and you'll see this. And then lastly, pray with gratitude. Spiritual writers from all of history has always said, the greatest prayer we could ever give is thank you. Thank you to God for this day, for this time. I'm grateful to all of you for your attention and sticking around this whole entire time. I'm grateful to Elena for the invitation. Grateful for the opportunity to share this Ignatian spirituality with you in a little way. Hopefully it was helpful. Maybe even, in gratitude, go back later tonight before going to bed. Make your evening prayer, your closing prayer before going to bed. Revisit this meditation and continue it and see where the Lord wants to take you. Okay? Because in all these ways, if you practice a little bit of self-care for the wounded healer that is you, in time you will become like that bird on that waterfall, experiencing inner calm and true peace and freedom, despite the chaos and noise of the waterfall of life all around you. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Thank you so much for leading us in this very powerful meditation and reminding us not to take things for granted, especially Jesus that is, helping and watching over us.
That's right. That's
So
right.
very powerful. I have to say, I think you have to keep me in one place to be able to do that and nail me down. And you did it. I think it is, you have to have an intention,
Exactly.
a meaningful purpose to be able to do that. We're open for questions. Roger is going to help me point out some questions. I think we have a little bit of time, right, Father? Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of time. So we're open for questions. If you guys want any comments, any additions, or
So I just
questions
want to
about
say
the
thank you.
presentation. Hi, Glo.
Hi, Elena, and to the PNAA prayer group. Thank you for bringing Father Radmar. And truly, this is very important for all of us. So thank you for that reflection and the presence of the Lord for an hour that we really have Him. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you. Any questions in your end there on the chat room? I think Michelle is there also to help us look into.
Don't see any questions right now.
Okay.
Just comments.
Yeah.
Hi, Elena, it's Carol. Father, can we show the recording on YouTube and PNAA social media? Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna record it. You're recording, right, Carol? Oh, okay.
I recorded.
Okay, good. Good.
Perfect.
That was a comment from Agapito. This is a really good prep for the Holy Week coming up. So yes, indeed
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, indeed.
exactly.
Father, with the news about people against, anti-Asian,
Oh,
sentiment going on
yes,
in this media,
yes.
you know, um, what would be a good way of dealing with this proactively and not wait for something to happen to you before,
Yeah.
we react,
No, exactly. I think talk about it. Talk about that this is actually happening and that maybe it has happened already to you, you know. Make it known and that, again, like I shared in this thing, reach out, ask for help. Um, and I think in a practical way, if anybody does do that to you, do what everybody else seems to be doing. Turn on your phone and record it and turn them in, because this is it's not right. But we know this has been going on for years. It's just becoming more and more prevalent,
Mhm.
and it's not just against Asian Americans. It just happens to be such this way. I mean, last summer it was the Black Lives Matter. This year it's the Asian Americans. Unfortunately, because of this pandemic, has been politicized, and so it's taking its toll. And so it's important to speak up, speak out, but don't do it alone.
Mhm.
Maybe have a meeting about it,
Yeah.
to share your stories so that
Mhm.
you know that you're not alone in this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, Especially, I mean, things are probably different now, but growing up in the Midwest in the 70s and 80s, I mean, I got called names all the time, and even to this day,
Yeah.
within the Jesuits, they call it now microaggressions, right? Nobody's racist anymore, but there are still microaggressions that happen. Little comments that, oh, I'm just joking, but those are hurtful too. And
Mhm.
so it's up to us to speak up and to speak out, and not be the silent majority, the model minority, especially Pinoys, right? We don't want to cause rifts. We don't want to stir the waters, right?
Exactly.
We want
Ex-
to blend in and
Yeah.
assimilate,
Exactly.
but
W-
unfortunately, people
Yeah.
take advantage.
We are the good minority. We have actually
Yes.
enjoyed,
Yeah.
uh, we have enjoyed relationship with different cultures, and so
Yes.
I think we thought that we are safe from all this, and
Yes.
not anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, a Jesuit friend of mine, Filipino, his parents, they live in Sacramento. And it's Sacramento, right? California. And it's a very diverse neighborhood. But for some reason, some young kids think it's funny to haunt them and knock on their doors at all hours of the night, calling them names and telling them to go back to where you came from. And they're nurses. They're nurses who have been helping the community. But for some reason, and they finally caught this on their security camera, and they're just kids being kids. But because they're learning it from the news that it's okay to do this, but it's not,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not
So, what would you
okay.
suggest? How can we I mean, teach? I think we all know that it has to start from when they were young.
For
Just
sure.
like as the song says, you have to be taught to hate.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I think it's the heart of Christianity. Love your neighbor.
Mhm.
Love. Teach your children to love, to care for one another, to care for those who are different than yourself, right?
Right.
Nurses do that all the time. You're not supposed to discriminate against any patient. Everybody's treated with the same compassion and care,
Mhm.
right? Same
I think
thing.
I
It's
think it's also happening in the workplace. Sometimes
yeah,
you get passed on for
yeah,
when you're in promotions, and it has
right.
happened to me. And I learned to speak up, and because if we don't speak up, it will never, they will never know where we're at. So,
Exactly
and
right.
those promotions are really important. So that's why I emphasize to the younger ones that if, speak up, and even in your evaluation, put everything you've done. Don't be humble, so
Mhm.
that
Exactly.
when they know, your
Mhm.
supervisors or administration will know that you're doing all this work, because we
Yes.
tend to be very humble sometimes.
Exactly right.
That's not the trend nowadays. You have to speak
Right.
up.
The thing that's important here, what's important though with that, Gerald,
Jill,
how do you pronounce it?
Jill,
What's that?
Jill,
Jill?
Jill.
Jill. The thing with that, with humility, that's always a tricky word, because for many of us, we think humility is, opo, yes po, ganon, right? No, true humility, Christian humility. Jesus is the epitome of humility and humbleness, but he
Yeah.
was never, oh, no. Humility is knowing who you are in the eyes of God, and that is a beloved son or daughter, right? And a loved person, and with worth and dignity, regardless of what other people or how other people treat you. So you need to treat yourself with that same dignity and respect that God created you to be. And so humility is not a bad thing, but it becomes problematic when we treat humility from this point of deferentialness, right? Which is what most Asian Americans, unfortunately, for the reason that we've already shared, so that we don't get, we don't want to stir up the waters. We say, okay lang. I remember my grandmother, she was, I love her to pieces, right? The one that I showed you. But one thing that we learned from her, us kids, is just sweep everything under the rug. You don't want to cause trouble. There's issues in the family, so she'll talk to me. Like, you know what, your sister, blah blah blah. She becomes chismis, right? And it's like, why don't you talk to her yourself? Oh no, I don't want to cause more trouble. I don't want to cause any more trouble. I don't know what it's called in Tagalog, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You'd rather talk to somebody else about the person you have an issue with, because you don't want to cause, stir up the waters.
You don't. Yeah. Ironing the laundry, or you don't want
Yeah.
to know, and you hope that if you don't know, it will go away.
Yeah. Or nakakahiya. Ay, no. Muna. Okay lang. Peace na. Things like that. Okay. No, sometimes we got to speak up. And thankfully, some of the younger people are.
Thank you for the millennials, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for the millennials.
Father, there
Father
was a
Radmar,
Karen. Yeah,
this
Karen.
is
Michelle?
this
Hold on,
is
Karen.
Michelle Sendanya. Thank you for giving us your time for tonight, and giving us an hour spiritual healing. There was a question whether you can share your PowerPoint.
Oh, sure. You know what? I'll put it together and I'd like send a PDF or something, and I'll share it with Elena, and she can spread it out to everybody. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
another question, Father. There was a question from PNA Illinois, and the question is, Father, how, in order to heal, can you touch on forgiveness?
Yeah. Forgiveness is very important, depending on the situation that needs healing, of course, right? But forgiveness is really important, especially of yourself. That's the hardest thing for us to forgive ourselves. When we screw up, when we sin, when we do the wrong thing, when we hurt somebody else, we feel so guilty, right? And it's that guilt that God, like if you go to confession, it's gone. God forgets it. God doesn't care about our sins anymore. We care too much, right? And so we need to learn to forgive ourselves too. Right? Again, I don't know what PNA Illinois what the situation is, but yeah, forgiveness is very an important part of healing, especially if there's a rift in a relationship, right? But also forgiveness of oneself. That's the hardest thing, and that usually once you acknowledge that, oh my gosh, I need to forgive myself, the healing process begins, and because at that point we allow God's mercy to take over. Because once until we forgive ourselves, we're like, we don't deserve it. No, we can't do it. My sin is too strong. My sin is greater than God's mercy. That's heretical. That goes against not only church teaching, but that goes against Christianity, because God's mercy far exceeds everything, and can supersede every sin. There's no sin that's greater than God's love and mercy. So forgiveness of self is a key part to healing. Hope that
This
made
is
sense.
just a joke, Father, but after you forgive, do you have to talk to them? No, I'm just teasing.
Not at first. Not at first. You can forgive from your heart, and then slowly but surely. Like I once had a classmate, a novice when I was a novice classmate. He no longer is a Jesuit, so I could talk about him. We had a falling out in community, and I avoided him. I could probably say I hated him for what he did, right? So I shared this with my novice director and, in a confession, and he goes, you know what? For your penance, I need you to forgive this person. Even though you don't feel like it, just forgive them. Just say, I forgive you. I forgive you. And just say, make that your mantra, even though you don't believe it. Why? Because then they don't become a demon in your eyes. You don't demonize them. They're still a human being who deserves to be forgiven. Because who knows why they did what they did. I may have my own image of what he did, but that was great advice from my novice director. And sometimes I use that when in confessions now, because it's a powerful tool, forgiveness. Even though you don't want to talk to them, you can still forgive. You can still forgive from your heart.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Father. I have
Yeah.
one question also. It was brought to me by a colleague. Of course, we all, since you're a Society of Jesus priest, Saint Ignatius is your patron saint, or your
Yes.
favorite saint.
Founder.
Is there
Yeah.
any other? Yeah, is there any other saints that influenced you aside from Saint Ignatius?
That's a great question. I'm embarrassed to say, well, now, yes, right? St. Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, St. Jude was my patron saint. So I could say that growing up, but I never really had much of a saint devotion, to be honest with you. And so I never really did much with saints. There's a great book by a brother Jesuit, Jim Martin. Maybe you have heard of him. He's got a book called My Life with the Saints. That's a great book to read because he takes these various different saints and kind of unpacks, who they're patron saints of, but also unpacks our lives and how saints can be our guides in our daily life. So growing up, I didn't really have much of a saint. I knew that St. Jude was my patron saint. My middle name was Thaddeus. So I knew that much, but I never really paid much attention to it until I became a Jesuit and I started learning, wow, saints are really important parts of our Catholic faith. Not all Catholics or Christians for that matter believe in saints, but we as Catholics, we do, and they are conduits of grace for us, right? They are interceders for us to the Lord. Sure, we can pray directly to Jesus as well, but it's like like your prayer warrior group, your prayer group every week. You guys are living saints who are interceding for the rest of the world. And hopefully you can add me to your list. I will add you to mine as well.
Of course, Father.
Yes, Father.
Yeah.
A follow-up question on the forgiveness, Father.
Yeah.
There was a question. Have you forgiven if you continue to still hurt?
Yes, you can. You can forgive and not forget, right?
Yes,
The hurt part
correct.
is real. Depending on what the situation is, that's real stuff. However, whatever caused the break or the hurt that you needed to forgive, right? So can you forgive and still hurt? Absolutely. Hopefully in time, the more you forgive that person or the more you accept forgiveness for yourself, if you're the one that transgressed, the less the hurt becomes. Because that's what Jesus promises, that I'm there for you. I'm, in my wounds, it's his wounds that kind of help us to heal if we allow it to, I think Michelle has another question. You have your hand raised there, Michelle?
Oh, no, I was about to ask you the same question earlier, but you already answered it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And
By the way, Michelle, are you oh, no, you're home now. Were you at the office earlier?
Yes,
Or-
and I was supposed to be, I should be hosting the event tonight, but I got stuck with a patient that's very ill, a critically ill patient.
Yeah.
And I just got off and then I drove listening to your spiritual
Oh my
healing
gosh.
and I just got home. Yeah.
Okay, good. I saw you
Yeah.
earlier. I'm like, wow, that's dedication. She's still at work.
Yeah,
She logged in at work.
I know, and this is how great PNAA is, Father, because when we found out that Michelle was stuck at work, Carol Robles
Ah,
for
that's
Yes.
her. Yeah, and
I
stayed
really
on
thank Carol
and,
Robles for
and helped
saving me
us out.
tonight.
yeah.
So
Carol, thank you so much. You saved me tonight.
So any other questions for Father before we let him go? I think
I
we're
see some comments. I see some comments, and I agree with Agapito and Christina. True healing can only come from healing, the healing of our wounds from Christ's healing. Yes. And yes, our woundedness can, and that's the important reason why we should kind of allow ourselves to be healed as well, because our woundedness can wound others. You know, that's the danger of not accepting help from others, right? And then forgiving people in silence and never speaking to them again is a form of self-care. Again, depending on the situation, absolutely. You know, like you can, you let it go. You just let it go, because some people, no matter how hard you try, they just are not willing. They are not willing to receive your forgiveness or even want to talk to you again. So, okay, you just forgive the situation, you walk away. That's okay too. And that is a form of self-care. That is correct.
There's a question here, Father. Can a wounded healer bless the dying patient on his last moments?
When is here bless the dying patient in the last moments? I don't see why not. It's not like, a priest blessing that dying person, but I think your presence alone is a blessing for them. Your presence alone comforts and heals in those last moments. To see a caring face, even if it's behind PPE these days, or a mask, just your eyes tell it all.
There's another
Um,
question for you, Father. It
Yeah.
says here, since Easter is coming, can you touch on atonement?
Atonement. Yeah. I think a simple answer, and this is kind of part of that. If you haven't already gone, go to confession. Find a priest in your area, go to confession. And I have a little bit of issue with that word atonement, because it strikes very much of, well, I shouldn't say this because maybe some of you are evangelicals, but and I don't mean to badmouth evangelicals, but the atonement theology can be problematic because it puts all the emphasis on us. Either we do this or God can never forgive us. We have to atone, otherwise we'll never be forgiven. We've already been forgiven. That was the cross, right? And so we've already been saved. Now we do mess up, and so we do
Redeemed.
have to atone for those sins by, in the theology of reconciliation, the sacrament of reconciliation is making amends, right, doing penance. And unfortunately, I don't do this. So if ever you come to me for confession live, because we can't do it on Zoom, I'm never going to give you 5 Our Fathers, 3 Hail Marys, or whatever as your penance, because that doesn't mean anything. It's back in the old days, that was the easiest thing to do because your line was long. You got to get people through. Atonement or penance is really, okay, I don't know. I fought with my husband. I fought with my wife. Okay, your penance, you do something nice for them. You atone for that by doing something nice to make up for that transgression. You've been forgiven. You leave confession. You receive atonement. You receive absolution. But the reconciliation still needs to happen between you and the person that you transgressed against, right? So that healing needs to take place. That reconciliation needs to take place. So then you do the penance. You, I don't know, buy them their favorite dinner, or take them out on a date, or do something nice for them. Do the dishes that you never do because it's your wife's job, or whatever it may be. So in that way, yes, Easter is coming, and go to confession. Find the opportunity, if you have it available to you in your area, to go to the sacrament of reconciliation if you're Catholic, or if you're not Catholic and you're Protestant or evangelical, do whatever you do to confess your sins, to put it out there, because God is right there waiting to forgive. I hope that made sense.
Yes, it did. Father, one more thing.
Yes.
Being an actor and transitioning to becoming a priest, how hard is that? Or you said something, I read something in an article about you describing the similarity between acting and being a priest.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you expound on that for us, please?
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, before I went to Boise, I was here in Los Angeles again. I was acting again. I was a professional actor again. I was missioned. That was my main mission, was to go back to Hollywood and be an actor again. Why? Because I really believe that Hollywood is a mission field, right? And we're a missionary order. And so I thought that I could bring Christ to the people of Hollywood by being an actor, by infiltrating as an actor, if you will, right? That proved to be very difficult, and plus, I found that God was calling me elsewhere. But what I realized in that time was how I reconcile my life as an actor to my life as a priest now. What does an actor do? An actor takes words from a script, from a page, and embodies that, and brings this character to life, so that you, the audience, can experience the story and feel something: sadness, joy, laughter, whatever it may be, right? If I do my job well as an actor, I will bring those words to life and you will feel something as an audience. Okay. When you think about it, what is that? That is incarnation. That's the definition of incarnation. So what do I do as a priest? I take the word, scripture, and incarnate it, bring it to life in the way that I preside. I'm not performing up there, but I use my performative skills to incarnate the word in such a way that you, the congregation, are drawn into the story of the Paschal mystery, the life, death, passion, and resurrection of Christ, drawn into that story, and your lives are changed in some way through the homily, through my presiding style, through, whatever, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by somebody, Agapito's comment. Thank you, by the way, Agapito. You're familiar with the wounded healer term from Henry Nouwen. Yes, very good. So that's how I explained my job as an actor and my role as a priest, how they come together. It's this incarnational theology, this bringing to life Christ, right? So that the people of God encounter him, which is why I love retreat work, why I love guided meditations, because it brings Christ in a very real way through our imagination, and hopefully moves us towards greater wholeness, healing, hope, greater faith, hope, and love. Right? So.
Do you give retreats outside of your student body?
Well, yes, now I do. I'm no longer working with the students, so I do give retreats. But my main work right now is vocation ministry, and or recruiting, if you will. And so a lot of my retreats are for young men who are interested in the Society of Jesus, becoming a Jesuit. Every so often, I will, if I find the time in my calendar, I will give a retreat for different groups, parishes, things like that.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm actually working on a project right now for the parishes here in Los Angeles. So with another. In the meantime, I do these little mini retreats, right?
Yes.
Little talks like this. Hopefully, it was a retreat-like experience for all of you.
Do you have anything, Roger?
No, for now.
Michelle?
What's your question, Elena? I didn't hear you clearly.
Any questions over there in the chat room or anywhere?
Yeah, I see one last question there from Illinois.
Yes. There's
Uh,
one.
Illinois again.
Yes.
Uh,
So yes, to answer your question, Philippine Nurses Illinois. Yes, Boise, Idaho. There's a lot of Mormons in that area. As a matter of fact, right next door to the student center was the Mormon Student Center. And when we were there, when I was there anyway, a lot of Mormon kids came over just out of curiosity. I think for them, it was their opportunity to try to convert some of our students. But what they found was greater depth than what they had thought. And I even baptized an ex-Mormon 1 year when I was there, right? So a lot of them have come in, joined RCIA, left the Mormon church, and so at least in Boise, we're having some influence on the Mormon students, showing them the love of Christ in a way that, is very different than their experience.
Yeah. So were there exchanges, interfaith exchanges while you were there? I mean,
I don't know what you mean by interfaith exchanges. They invited us over to their place to kind of see what they do, but it wasn't the same. It was like, okay, that's interesting. Well, come over to our place. We've got this event happening or this retreat going on, things that they didn't have because that's not their theology. Their theology is very different.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So growing up, Father, were you aware how famous your mother was in the Philippines?
Yes, because everywhere we went growing up as kids, there were people like, oh my God, this is they're so like fangirling and fanboying, right?
Yes.
And so we're like, oh my God.
For those of you who know Susan, Amalia, and Tessie Agana is Father Radmar's mother.
Yeah.
So and we were also very lucky to have the family here in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you a quick story that's really fascinating too. So in 2008, I was teaching in University of San Francisco, and one of the Jesuits came up to me and said, Radmar, there's another Radmar on Facebook. I said, that's impossible. My name is made up, very Filipino. R is Rodolfo, AD, my dad's name, AD is Adriano, my maternal grandfather, MAR is Mariano, my paternal grandfather, firstborn son. So they put all those names together, Radmar, great. So I said, that's impossible to be another Radmar, it's made up. So I went to Facebook, and sure enough, I found this Radmar, I think it was Gonzalez or something. So I sent him a message. And the next day I said, this is Radmar Jao from San Francisco, California. Where are you and how did you get your name? He writes back the next day and he says, I'm from the Philippines and my parents told me that I'm named after the firstborn son of a famous Filipino movie star from way back when. And I'm like, my mom was the Shirley Temple of the Philippines. I think you're named after me. And I found out he was. It was the case. His mom was a big fan of my mom. And so when she was pregnant with him, she saw a fan magazine. By this time, we were in the States. And she saw this fan magazine saying, where are they now? Oh, Tessie Agana is now in Indiana. And here are the name of her kids. And she said, if I have a son, this was 72. If I have a son, I'm going to name him Radmar. There you go. So I have a namesake.
Right? That is a wonderful story, Father.
Yes.
Your mom was a very famous child star. I remember it. I remember her growing up.
Yes, thank you.
I watched her movies.
Yeah. Please pray for her though. Please pray for her now. She's still alive. She's in her late, I think 78, 79. But she had a stroke a couple of years ago, so and her dementia is there. So
about three years older than me. I'm 75, so
okay.
I watch her movies as a child.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any more comments, questions? We don't want to keep all of you.
This is late for the East Coasters. Oh my gosh.
I know. Thank you. But I have one last question. Okay, since nobody is asking. Okay, I was gonna do this rapid fire questions from inside the actor's studio, but since we don't have time, so we thought I would ask the last one that James Lipton usually asks. If you go to heaven, because there is no question that heaven exists, right?
Yes.
Unlike some of the movie stars, if you go to heaven, what do you think God will say to you?
Well, I hope God will say, "Well done, good and faithful good and faithful servant."
Servant.
I really do. I hope that's what he says. I try my best. I fail all the time. I fail all the time, and I
Agree.
have failed. But I get up and try again. So I hope he says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."
Well, that's very good. I think that's for all of us too, Father. That's what we want.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much on behalf of PNAA and all these collaborations from all the different task forces and
Maybe we could do one more meditation with Father. I love that meditation.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was
Well, you can watch
crying.
it again. Just watch it
I
again.
was
do it again. Yeah, that's
I
right.
cried when you were at that part where Jesus was leaving the room.
Mhm.
And what do you want him to say to you? And I told myself, I'm taking care of your pain.
Mm,
So it was such a very moving experience. Father, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Father Rod.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you. Thank you.
God bless.
God bless. I'll talk to you later, Father, okay?
Oh,
Okay. Oh yes, I'll send you the slides that you can share.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Father.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Ingat
Good
kayo,
night, everybody. Good
Ingat
night, East
lahat.
Coast.
Ingat kayo.
Good night, Chicago.
Thank you
Have a
again,
good, have
Carol.
a blessed Easter,
Happy
everyone.
Easter, everybody. Happy Holy Week. Yes, happy
Thank
Holy
you
Week.
from Virginia.
Blessings to
see
you
you.
in Virginia.
We'll see you again, Father. Soon.
Hopefully, God willing.
That's enough.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.